Today we're going to be taking a very first look at the Zhiyun Crane 3S. Let's get into it. Hey, I'm Scott and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we do all kinds of unboxings, tests, tutorials, reviews, anything photo and video related. So if you like the content, please do consider hitting that subscribe button under the video and turn on notifications to get updates when new content is uploaded. So like I said, today we're going to be taking a first look at the Zhiyun Crane S. Now, it's been raining like crazy here, so I haven't had a chance to really play with it outside of my house. So just up front, this is not going to have any test footage in this video. I'm sorry. I'm also not going to bother mounting a camera on here. I'll post a picture of one mounted on there that weighed about 4 kilograms and it balanced no problem. Today's video is going to be strictly my first impressions. I've made a list of things that I wanted to say that I've noticed just in getting it out of the box, getting it set up and kind of testing it out and figuring out how it all works. And I want this video to kind of be a stepping stone for my final review. So what I want from you guys in this video is to leave a comment down below with what you want to know, what you want to see about the Zhiyun Crane 3S. And I can't guarantee that I'll test everything, but I will use that as a guideline for making my final review. And today, hopefully, these first talking points, things that I noticed so far, will help you to get a starting idea of whether or not this might be a gimbal you really want to consider or not. So first off is what's in the box. The box itself is one of those kind of really nice, high quality, I guess you could call it styrofoam cases that seem to come with pretty much every gimbal lately. And I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of these, but it does the trick and it's very protective and it looks cool, I guess. It's got these little locks on here like they all do, and then you can just pull it open and that's what you get. Anyway, so this will come in a couple of different kits and they may expand on that in the future, but I'll put a graphic up on screen right now that shows what they are advertising, at least for now. This is the basic kit. This at the moment doesn't have the external power pack. It doesn't have the follow focus or the wireless transition module or anything like that. I will be getting that probably today or tomorrow actually, and I'll include that in my final review. So if you have questions about that, let me know. But this is, the basics of what you get. You got your instructions. You got 3 batteries here, which are labeled FST18650. They're 2600 milliamp hour batteries. You got 3 of them, and we'll show you how they go into here after. You've got the tripod plate, which does seem to be Manfrotto compatible. And it also has these screw threads on the front here to attach these little rods here. And these are not 15 millimeter rods. They're a little bit smaller, but they just screw right into the front here. And that's going to work with Zhiyun's follow focus module. But that's a pretty cool plate, and if this was 15 millimeters, that would be amazing. But either way, it's just a nice little easy way to integrate these rods for that follow focus motor. And of course, these rods are also threaded on both ends, which means if you want to use only one of them and then screw them together to get a longer rod, if you need it for a longer lens, you can do that. I'll put the exact dimensions for these rods, both in diameter and length, one individual and also when they're screwed together, just so that you can know exactly how long it is if you're concerned that it's not long enough for whatever lens you're using. Then you've got this little mini tripod here, and this little mini tripod means business. It is serious business here. It's got a 3/8 inch screw thread on the top, which this actually utilizes a lot more 3/8 inch screws instead of 1/4-20. So that will fit right in there, and we'll show you again in a minute how that fits. But it's really solid, all metal. You've got these rubber grip on the outside, which makes it more comfortable to hold, because as you screw it into the bottom, it's going to be actually your handle when you're carrying this, two-handed or one-handed, whatever. Down here, you've got a lens support bracket, and this is going to go onto those little mini rods that we just talked about, and that will then loosen here, and you can raise it or lower it to support especially longer lenses. You've got, I guess this is like a riser plate if you need to raise the height of your camera. I'm not 100% sure on that, so sorry if that's a stupid mistake, but you've got this little thing in here. You've got this adapter, which will, I believe, screw into this rear mounting point here. If you want to use a different handle with it, you could use this grip right here with that, and it kind of repositions the weight or something, gets it away from that rear motor as you're holding it. But also in one of the other packages, I think it's the 3SE, they have a different type of rear grip instead of this one. And I think this is going to screw in here, and then you're going to attach that here. It's kind of weird that they included it in this because this is not 3SE, but it is included here. You've got, of course, the battery charger and the USB cable to connect that to the wall. I've got a few little cables in here, and this is for camera control, I believe. And I've got 4 here, but there's different models available. I use the Canon EOS R and also the Zcam E2, and especially with this larger gimbal, I'm not going to be using the R. I'm going to be using this with the Zcam E2 and E2 F6, which I believe at the moment it does not have a camera control for the E2 series, unfortunately, but I believe it will be coming in the future. Hopefully the near future, but we'll see about that. In here I've got this little cover, which was originally already on the gimbal. I took it off, but this is just a little cover for this rear mounting point here. If you're not using it, that'll just slide out. I don't care, I just put it out of the way because I'm going to lose it if I don't. And then you've got a number of extra screws. You've got extra like 1/4 screws for, I guess, the tripod plates, and you've got some tiny screws. There's 2 extra in here. I've already used 4 of them, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Down here you've got this rear grip, and I think there's a more special name for it, but it's the rear grip. And this will again slide right into here. We'll show you that in a second as we set it up. It's got some controls on the back here to change the follow mode. It's got some on the side here. You can navigate through the menu with this. It's got the wheel here. You've got the record, start, and stop. You've got a couple of different buttons on here, and I'm still kind of getting to know this gimbal because there's buttons everywhere, and I haven't had a chance to really take it out and use it all that much yet. But you can control a lot right from there. On the back side, you've got your zoom control and another dial right here, I assume for camera control. You've got some contacts on the end here that are going to communicate with the gimbal itself, and this kind of flip lock system, which again we'll show you in just a second. And then you've got, of course, the gimbal itself right here, and it is a large gimbal for sure. And I told you I already used 4 screws, and that's because I've already attached this extension arm here. Normally this was not originally attached. The motor here, this part of the gimbal, was originally attached right to here. These 4 screws were originally where these 4 are now. And then you take that off, you move it out, and there's a cable in there. You got to pull the cable to extend it a little bit. And then you replace that missing section with this part right here, which is powered by Zhiyun. And then you use extra screws, which were originally included, to screw those both in there. And it's really, really secure. The way that they lock into each other means that it's not only the screws that are holding it in there. The screws are holding them together, but the actual shape that they interlock with is holding it in there. So it's really, really secure. But it is a semi-permanent change. It's not something you can quickly go back and forth between the smaller arm and the larger arm. So if you want to switch this out for the larger arm, just keep in mind that it's going to take a little while if you want to go back to the shorter setup. But it does fit into the case with the larger arm, so I'm happy that at least they thought about that. And for me, a large gimbal like this is going to be for a large camera, so I'm always going to keep this on here. If I need a smaller camera, I'm just going to use a smaller gimbal. I know obviously that means you have to have 2 gimbals, but if you have large cameras and you have the budget to buy a large gimbal like this, I'm assuming that buying another smaller gimbal for smaller cameras is not that big of a deal for you, if you don't already have one. So first up, before I go through my checklist of things that I wanted to point out in this video, we're just going to get this basically set up. We're not going to put a camera on it for today, but we're going to get this basically set up just to show you how these parts kind of fit together. This rear arm, whatever it's called here, has this, again, this lock that you can kind of lift up, and basically you're going to pull it back, and then you're going to slide this in, and you can hear it snap right there. So that's not the only lock. That's what I was concerned about at first, was that this was the only lock that's holding it in place. It's not. It snaps into place just like a tripod plate, and this is the button you would push to then unlock it and release it. But when you push it in, it snaps into place, and then you're going to push this little lever down to really tighten it in there. So it's very secure. The arm itself, though, is a lot more plastic than the rest of the gimbal is, and this is taking a lot of torque here. I'm assuming there's some kind of metal frame on the inside there, and only the outside is plastic. I mean, it doesn't feel like cheap plastic, but considering the amount of weight that this arm can be taking, I was a little bit disappointed to see that it was made of more plastic than the rest of the, I mean, I guess this part here is made of plastic, but I'm assuming again that this part here, where it locks in, this part feels metal. So I'm assuming that this goes, through the center of this, but this is fairly lightweight. So again, just for kind of such a critical part, I was hoping that this was going to be a little bit more robust, but so far, even with a fairly heavy camera on there, I haven't noticed any flex or anything like that. So again, I'm saying this, but at the same time, I wouldn't worry about it too much because it doesn't seem to be an issue. Just I'm curious what's going on the inside of here. So next up, you can see here on the bottom that they have this 3/8 inch screw thread, which is great because again, this is going to be needing to be a more robust connection, and a 3/8 inch screw is obviously more robust than a 1/4-20. But they also have these other little locking points around here. So I'm assuming that down the road, near future, far future, whatever, it's going to be very easy to make more and more accessories for this. You know, ring grips. You can mount this onto an easy rig. You can mount this onto a jib arm or something very, very easily because of the form factor. And that 3/8 inch screw, in addition to the little locking pin holes around it, I think are going to make it a lot easier to make accessories that really work together with this in a really, really secure and nice way. So anyway, the little mini tripod just screw onto the bottom of there. And then to stand this up, we're going to open up the legs here and stand it up. So at first, I felt like this battery door was actually a little bit flimsy, but more and more, I really, really like it. It's just really easy to use. You have this little lock and unlock switch here, and it's not like a spring-loaded lock. It just switches like that. And this is a prototype version. It's not 100% the same as the final version, so that little details like that may be different on the final version, so don't hold me to it. But what I have now is it just kind of switches into place, and once you unlock it, boom, you just lift up the cap like that, drop it down, boom, it's locked. That's really, really easy to use, and actually I do appreciate that. They have this little ribbon in here also, so you can pull the batteries out pretty easily. So we'll just lay that across there. First battery goes in the bottom section here, boom. I'm gonna go across there just so that way I can pull the other batteries out easy too. And the other two batteries will go on top of that in this kind of triangle formation here. Boom, boom, that easy. I'm not sure how easy this is going to be to see on screen, but basically you have these three locks. You've got one lock here, you've got one lock here, and then you've got one lock here on each of the motors. So that way you can lock each of these arms in place. Either when you're transporting it, it just makes it easier because it doesn't, do this. Or as you're balancing, you can lock two of the axes and then balance one of them, lock the other two, balance one more. And just it makes it a lot easier to isolate each of these individual axes when you're balancing it. So I really appreciate that. And the way that they work is you can kind of put them into stage one, I guess you could say. So I think you can see this on camera here, stage one. And then as you turn it, it will kind of snap into place when it's in position. And then you can go ahead and really tighten it down and it will hold itself in place. And then to unlock it, just unlock it all the way and you're loose again. So it's kind of nice that you don't have to twist it as you're looking for the correct position. You can kind of switch it there into phase one, find its spot, and then tighten it down. It's just actually really easy to use. It's a small detail, but I like the way that they design these locks here. So you can see now, with all of them locked, nothing is going anywhere. So that's going to be really, really easy. And again, if you want to, for example, let's say, lock this axis in this position, and then you wanted to only balance this way, now you don't have to worry about trying to hold this motor as you're balancing this way. You can just get this balanced, and then you can lock that down, and then you can unlock this one, and then you can balance it this way, and then you can lock that down, and it just makes it a really easy process. Now, while I don't have the follow focus unit yet, the wheel here on the handle is actually really smooth. It feels pretty similar to what you would get on a typical follow focus. It's maybe a little bit on the light side, but it feels pretty good. And I think it's one of the better feeling follow focus wheels that I have tried on gimbals that do have this built in. It's got this rubber grip to it. And again, the resistance feels a little bit light, but really pretty good overall. Now I've showed you some of the controls in this rear grip here, but there are also some controls on the side here, and this is also where you're going to power it on. You've got some buttons again for camera control as well as the follow modes and things like that. And I'll go more in detail to that again in another video, but you can see here, and you can also read that stuff online. It's not that important that I pointed out to you in this video. But you've also got this joystick here, and I just found that this joystick was in a kind of weird position. Of course, typically you're going to close this down and carry it like this, maybe these two hands like this. It feels a little bit far. I mean, I guess if you're gripping it up here, it's okay. But if you're not holding it like this, if you're holding it like this, I wish that there was also a joystick on here. Maybe it's not something that you're really going to need that much, but I feel like they kind of just tucked this in here in this little position here. But it is what it is. Again, if you're holding it with two hands like this, then you can reach that just fine. And I guess there's not really too much of a great place to put it otherwise. Maybe if they put it on this rear grip, it would get bumped too easily. So things that I wrote down here are that it feels really, really strong, well made. Again, this is a little bit plasticky, but generally speaking, otherwise feels really, really well made. I mean, the motors are huge. It definitely feels like, yeah, this is meant to take a lot of weight. And again, from what I've seen so far, it really does take that larger and heavier camera setup very, very well. It's really, really, versatile, and I guess you could say modular, because you can do things like attaching and detaching this little mini tripod down here. You can take this rear grip off and put it back on. You can attach, the mini tripod back here instead. You could very easily mount this again onto something like a crane or easy rig. You can hang it upside down using the 3/8 inch screw thread here, and just all of these connections here, and the sliding connection here. I feel like this is going to make it really, really easy to have a variety of other third-party makers, and also Zhiyun themselves, make other accessories for this, a ring grip, different connections and different rigs that you can use to make this a lot easier to carry, because it is going to be very heavy. But just I feel like this is a very, very modular system, which I really, really like. Well, I said that balancing a camera on this heavier camera worked no problem. I was able to get it perfectly balanced in just the same amount of time that it took to balance a regular camera on a regular gimbal. I did find that because it's heavier, it does put more, torque, more stress on these arms. And the arms themselves are totally fine, but when you loosen up the arms to get it balanced, to slide them back and forth, that extra weight does make it a little bit more tricky, and sometimes that friction, I guess, of the weight pushing on the arms can make it a little bit trickier to slide them back and forth. So you want to kind of lift it up a little bit and then slide it through. When you're actually doing this, you'll see exactly what I mean, unless they change something again on the final production version. But it was a little bit sticky because of that weight, and I had to put a lot of force to push the arm through this rear motor to get it balanced. But again, after I lifted it just a little bit to relieve some of the stress on the arm, it slid through no problem, and I was able to get it balanced a lot easier. So if you're having trouble with it, just keep that in mind. As a last point, the case itself doesn't have a whole lot of extra space for extra accessories if you do get that extra battery pack that they have for this to last, I think it's like 12 hours or something like that. Or if you get the follow focus or the wireless module, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of space in here to fit extra things like that, which means you're going to have to carry those separately. And that's a little bit of a bummer. Now, I'm not 100% positive if you buy this in a kit, if it's going to come with a different case that can include those things, or if it's just going to come with the same case plus a couple extra boxes. But I have passed that along to Zhiyun, that feedback back to Zhiyun, and I'm not sure if they're going to react to it or not. But just keep in mind that if, at least with this case, if you have extra accessories, they're not going to fit in here most likely unless you really squeeze them in somehow. So again, that was my very quick introduction to this gimbal, just the very basics. Again, I haven't really had a chance to use it outside because of the weather yet, so I don't want to go too much more into detail, but I have been playing with it in the house, so I thought I'd get this out to you and also use it as an opportunity to hopefully gather some questions and requests, I guess you could call it, from you guys to see what things you really want to see. What things you really want tested, and I will do my best to test as much of that as possible and include that all in the final review. So if you do have any requests or questions or anything like that, make sure that you let me know down below, and because that will really shape the direction of the final review for the Zhiyun Crane 3S. Otherwise, if you liked this video or found it helpful, please do consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't already. And as always, thank you for watching.